Welcome to Murfreesboro Storytellers. Our program today is originating from the boardroom of Murfreesboro Medical Clinic, thanks to Joey P., the administrator here. Our topic today is opioids, and our guests are Representative Bryan Terry, as well as Dr. Bryan Terry, as a medical doctor, as well as being a state representative, and Eric Cook, who is Assistant Chief of the Murfreesboro Police Department. Gentlemen, welcome. Appreciate you being with us.
Thank you for having us.
And our topic is opioids. This is a term we continue to hear all the time, it seems, about, and hearing about the problem. Explain opioids to me, if you would, Bryan.
Opioids are essentially a pain-killing type of medication. They've been around for a long time. The problem that we're having now is people getting dependent, tolerant, and having addiction to opioids, and we're actually having an increase in babies that are born addicted to opioids.
Because the mother has been taking them.
The mother's been taking them, and it passes to the baby in utero. So, what exactly an opioid is it is a painkilling medication that attaches to receptors in your bodies and into your body, and then some of the pain-killing effects, but some of the other effects that it has on you. And when you take it longer term and the amount that you take, you increase the risk of getting the addiction. And so what ends up happening is you start and you have tolerance, where you have to have more and more medication to have that same effect. Then you get dependence, where your body's dependent on it, and then you go to addiction.
Okay. And that addiction leads you to go for other items or drugs as well.
And that is correct. Once you're addicted, that is a behavioral change that a lot of people have. And what we're seeing now is that people are going to the street, and obviously heroin is an opioid. Fentanyl, which is an actually legal drug that we have in the hospitals and in the ORs. People are using that on the streets now. They're getting it from China through Mexico, and they're seeing that.
And Eric, you've seen this in your work as a vice officer, I'm sure.
Oh yes, I worked for many years. I ran a narcotics unit, but just in general, just in police work, we have been seeing an increase in opiate use. Really, when we start talking about heroin and fentanyl since 2012, it has really started to climb and spike on us. And a lot of the fentanyl that we're running into is coming from the illicit market. It's not counterfeit per se, it is fentanyl, but it's not produced in a real pharmaceutical setting where that is, what would be prescribed by doctors. And that's where we run into, a huge problem.
Mm-hmm. And you see a lot of that happening on the streets here?
Oh, yes,
coming
sir.
into our community?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, there's been a significant increase since 2014 in the amount of fentanyl and the analogs of fentanyl that are similar in relation. There's sufentanil, which is actually another drug that we use at the hospital. And the way I like to explain it to folks, in order for you to go from tolerance to dependence to addiction, the potency of the drug and the route of administration speeds you up through that process. And if we talk about opioids, most everybody's heard of morphine. Right. And so morphine is, we talk about morphine equivalents, and there's pain pills out there called Percocet or Lortabs. They're a little bit different, but they're both opioids. But Percocet is about 1.5 times as strong as morphine. Heroin's about 5 times as strong as morphine. Fentanyl is about 100 times as strong as morphine. Sufentanil is about 1,000 times strong as morphine.
Oh my word.
And then there is a large animal tranquilizer out there called carfentanil that is 10,000 times as strong as morphine. And so what you're seeing is people that are dealing these drugs illicitly on the street, they know that it's more potent and they're getting it cheaper than heroin. And if they get it into somebody's system quicker, they get addicted quicker. Okay. And so that's why they've got that on the streets.
Contrast the effect of morphine and the one that's 10,000 times stronger, other than the numbers.
Well, the one that's 10,000 times stronger, you just have to use 1 microgram of that versus for sufentanil it would be 10 micrograms versus fentanyl would be 100 micrograms. So it's just a small amount is all you need to have what I would consider to be a human dose of the medication. Of course, carfentanil is not used in humans, but it's out there.
Okay.
And I think what we see too is, you mentioned, the pills, Percocets and things like that. Well, a lot of people, we're seeing where they're getting fentanyl off the illicit market.
Okay.
And then they get a pill press and they try to use fentanyl with whatever other adulterant they can make up, and then they'll press these into pills and purport them to be, Lortabs or Percocets and things of that nature. And people are buying them believing that they're buying them on the illicit market, but they're buying them believing they're a little bit safer because they are, maybe have been diverted from its, intended use, to the illicit market. But that's not the case, and that's not what they're getting. And then when that happens, that's when we start seeing, the increase in overdoses and things of that nature, because they're not getting, that Percocet. You're getting that fentanyl that is, 10,000 times as, or 1,000 times stronger, and they think they can take it in the same dosage. And plus, it's some guy that's producing it, somewhere that is allowing. There's not any quality control in it.
I'm sure. Yeah.
I was going to say, in addition, I think they're also finding, within marijuana, they're spiking it with fentanyl. And so those are some issues if they're out there buying this illicitly on the street, and it's spiked with fentanyl or other drugs.
They're smoking it then with the marijuana.
And so they're really you're playing Russian roulette with your life if you're getting these drugs on the street.
What are we going to be able to do about it? I know there's legislation, I believe, in the General Assembly.
There is. Actually, I have a bill, House Bill 1547, that increases the penalties for illicit sales, manufacturing, possession, or distribution of fentanyl, sufentanil, carfentanil, remifentanil, and their analogs. Currently, unfortunately, in our current code, heroin actually has a higher penalty than these other medications or these drugs on the street. And so I'm looking to change that based on the amount of potential lethal doses. Currently, they're a Class C felony. And for me, if you're caught with those on certain, depending on how many lethal doses you have, it either bumps up to a B or an A felony, so it has an enhancement factor. And additionally, the bill also has that if you alter another drug like marijuana, it increases the enhancement factor on your penalty as well.
And you're seeing this on the street, didn't you say, Eric? Is it rampant in certain sections of our city?
It is a definite problem, and it's not really just in certain sections, because I think the opiate issue is it affects a broad section.
Okay.
It's not, you can't put it in one geographic area of the, of the city of Murfreesboro, but it's definitely on the rise. It's definitely on the increase. We monitor overdose and overdose deaths, and we investigate those. And just in talking with the medical examiner's office, there are, Rutherford County in general, just countywide, has probably in the last year seen close to 100 overdose deaths, and those numbers are, they kind of fluctuate, and a large percentage of those numbers actually come out of the city of Murfreesboro. Our first responders, when we talk about the fire department and the ambulance service that are responding to these, I spoke to someone at the ambulance service, at the Rutherford County Ambulance Service, and I think they had administered Narcan, which is a drug used to counteract the effects of opiates, to over 400 patients in the last year. In not just the city of Murfreesboro, but that's countywide in Rutherford County. So when you look at it that way, and you look at the, the population, of Rutherford County, then yeah, it's rampant. I mean, it's a definite issue, and and I think that's one reason that that the legislature is taking this on, and you're seeing not only locally, us dealing with it, but nationally, it's got a lot of.
Yeah, that was a bill actually that I passed a year or so ago with Narcan, and it would be for patients that are at risk of an overdose. You may have patients that actually need the medication, but they have sleep apnea or something along those lines, or somebody that's a chronic pain patient that they have these things. If you're absorbing the medication, these long-acting medications, if you happen to have something called dose dumping, where the medication you absorb at once, the bill basically allowed patients that were at risk or their family members or caregivers to have access to Narcan.
Okay.
So naloxone is the drug. And so had that bill been, and had they had access to it in Minnesota, Prince may not have died. So, I've been dealing with this and working on this almost my entire time up there. But we're looking at getting first responders, police officers getting Narcan, because some of these medications can be absorbed on your skin. So when they've got to be very careful when they're going in on a drug bust that they are not inhaling the medication or they're not getting it on their skin. So they need to have access to medication that can reverse it.
Can reverse that, okay, I see. But it is available on the ambulance service and as all the first responders, is that right?
Yeah, the ambulance service they have it, and then our fire department, has a fairly vigorous first responder program that enhances the things that the ambulance service have, and they have access to it also. So it's readily available to us when we need it.
Why has all this happened in the last 4 or 5 years?
Well, it's actually, yeah, it's actually.
I will say all of a sudden, that's not the right term, I believe.
What's kind of happened is mid-90s, before the mid-90s, the Percocets or Lortabs were what they were called immediate release. You get the medication, you take it, it immediately absorbs, you get a certain level of narcotic in your system, and then it tapers down and you take another pill every 4 to 6 hours. Mid-90s, the drug OxyContin came out.
Okay.
And it's a long-acting. And so if it's 20 milligrams, it's slowly absorbed in your body and you have a steady state for 12 hours. And then you would take another one. And the thought process being when they marketed that was that you're not getting this spike, so you're not getting the potential euphoria, so you decrease the risk of addiction. And that's how they sold it to folks.
By the drug companies?
The drug companies. Late 90s, the drug companies and CMS, the VA, got together and essentially made pain the fifth vital sign. And in the early 2000s, that's when they call them Press-Ganey scores, or now they call them HCAP scores, but it's basically patient surveys and how hospitals and physicians get scored, and it ties it to payment. By making pain the fifth vital sign, it brought awareness that, hey, if I'm a physician or if I'm a hospital, I got to make sure their pain is taken care of. And so government essentially made it an incentive for doctors to prescribe more medication.
Okay.
Tennessee made that worse. In 2001, I wasn't in office then, but it was the Intractable Pain Treatment Act, and it said that patients have a right to have their pain treated. If they aren't treated, the physician has to refer them to somebody that will. And basically what that meant was they're going to refer them to a pain clinic. And that's when all of a sudden we saw an explosion of pain clinics in Tennessee. We actually had more pain clinics in Tennessee than in Texas. So we've repealed the Intractable Pain Treatment Act. They've reformulated the OxyContin to where it can't be absorbed all at once. They've got some longer acting medications out there that to prevent people crushing it and snorting it and that along that line. But then, 2013, 14 or so, that's when we started seeing fentanyl and some of these more powerful drugs start coming out in Tennessee. And like I said, they're great drugs in the OR, but if you don't know how to deal with them, you're playing Russian roulette out on the streets.
Okay. So it's just been an evolutionary thing
That's
based
correct.
on legislation and other activities, I guess it cause it to happen.
That's correct. And what we're seeing, there are essentially two. You have the illicit, the street, and the drugs that they're making on the street. The other route that they're getting out there, the way some people are getting addicted is from the street, some over prescription, and then what's called diversion. If you get a prescription for 30 pills and you only take 5, you've got an extra 25 in your cabinet. So people are taking those and going out to the streets selling them. And that's why they used to just divert it that way, and they were selling them on the streets. And now, if you think you're taking a diverted Percocet, but now you really have a spiked Percocet with fentanyl, it's a fake Percocet, like I said, you're really taking chances at that point in time.
Okay. You mentioned pain being the 5th vital sign.
Yes.
That's interesting. That's been added to that. So that gives them something else to determine the problem with a patient, I guess.
That is correct.
And
the feds actually have taken that out. And there's some legislation at the Capitol this year that's looking at not focusing on pain for that. In fact, I have a bill that deals with what's called episodes of care. So at the hospital, the payment, it's kind of a perverse system of payment. It's cheaper to prescribe a pain pill or give a patient a pain pill or to have them push a PCA pump than it is for them to actually have a nerve block or have the surgeon put a drain in them that has a local anesthetic in it.
Yeah.
But there's charges to all those, so it's cheaper to do a pain pump. I mean, it's cheaper to do a pain pill or the pump than it is to do something more technical.
Okay.
So my bill basically takes anything that might decrease the use of opioids out of the episode of care. And so when the state looks at the entire TennCare, looks at an entire episode, they're not counting those charges against what they call the quarterback, who would be the surgeon at the time, and make it look like they're charging too much or they're overusing the system. Because what we want is for them to use actual modalities that decrease pain that's not an opioid. For instance, they actually have IV Tylenol. Now, IV acetaminophen now that you can give. Unfortunately, it's a lot more expensive than a oral Tylenol or a suppository, but it's way more effective, and it can cut down.
I was going to ask why. Okay.
Yeah, but it can cut down a significant amount of the amount of opioids that you use in the perioperative period.
Oh, okay, all right, okay. The governor also has an effort to overcome this problem too, does he not? You working with the governor, I believe?
We are working with the governor on that, and there's different aspects that we're looking at. One of the aspects is from a prescription standpoint.
Okay.
And again, what I have in mind and what we have in mind is you have legitimate patients, legitimate providers that are in need, and they have to be protected.
Sure.
But there are bad actors that are out there. There are people that game the system, patients and providers.
There's a lot of doctor shopping goes on, I guess.
There's doctor shopping, and then and so what we're looking at is how we can get that into the controlled substance monitoring database quicker, have more checks on that, but without overburdening physicians that are legitimate providers. Also looking at things like from a prescription, if I write you for a 10-day prescription of drugs or of opioids, you may only get part of that filled the first 5 days, and you may not need the extra 5 days. And so those are some of the things that we're looking at.
Okay. So those are the same people who'll be selling them on the street or whatever that have the extra pills? Not necessarily?
Well, it's going to cut down on diversion. So, So if I write you a prescription for 10 days, but you really only need 5, you'll get a partial fill, which would be 5 days filled. And then if you want to come back and get the other 5, it's still there. But it'd be based on, I need it at that point in time. We're also looking at increasing the informed consent for patients, especially women of childbearing ages. We passed a bill yesterday through my subcommittee that if you're a woman of childbearing age, the risk of you getting pregnant, having opioids for long periods of time, the person that's prescribing the medication is going to have to inform the woman that there are risks involved.
Okay. Tell us a little bit more about children that become addicted by the mother taking opioids. Is that becoming a major problem?
It is, and what we're seeing in Tennessee right now, Tennessee's been one of the highest rates of prescribed medications, and going through the history and the Intractable Pain Act and all that, but we're actually seeing a decrease in prescriptions. We're still high on that list, but we're still seeing a decrease.
Significant?
Pretty significant.
Okay.
Unfortunately, though, we're seeing an increase in neonatal abstinence syndrome babies, and we're seeing an increase in hospitalizations and overdoses. And a lot of that has to do with the illicit drugs on the street, and then patients that end up long-term on medications that previously hadn't been prescribed these medications. And what we're seeing is, if at 5 days, if you've been on medication for over 5 days, you have an increased risk of going to what we call a chronic user. At 10 days, there's another jump in that risk. And so that's from the bills that we're looking at is making people think a little bit harder if you need this medication more than 5 days or if you need it more than 10 days. I mean, there are legitimate patients that do.
I'm sure.
But if you're not one of those that really needs it long term, we need to think long and hard about, these step processes.
How many doctors in the legislature? I know you and Dr. Dickerson, Senator Dickerson.
There are 4 in the Senate and there are 2 in the House.
Okay, so 6 doctors in the legislature. Eric, tell us a little bit more about the illegal sale and purchasing of it. Is this become a financial problem for a lot of people and will do other things to get money to be able to buy what they want?
Oh, most definitely. Mm-hmm. I think that, and we touched on it earlier when we talked about the diversion of, legally obtained, drugs onto the illicit market, and they're sold. And, we saw that progression come through here, and we'd actually worked cases in conjunction with, with the DEA to deal with some pain clinics that we had here that were fueling this, the addiction, not only for here, but people were traveling from out of state to come here to, to get their drugs. And
Were coming here to buy the drugs?
oh, most definitely, yes, sir.
Not just to sell them, but to buy them.
Yeah, West Virginia, Kentucky, I mean, any place within, an 8-hour drive, they're coming to, what they would describe as a doctor's appointment. And, you drive through 3 states to get to a doctor in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, located in some out-of-the-way place. Probably, we call that a clue, and, we end up dealing with it. So we saw that issue, and then with some of the initial things that, the tools that the legislature has given us, kind of early on to work with, and to try to combat some of these things. And, we made some, at least locally, some good, some strides in taking care of that. But that's when we started seeing, when you pull the pills out, the pharmaceutical-based pills, and they're not gone, but when those start becoming less and less available, that's when you start seeing the heroin come in, and that's when you start seeing the fentanyl come in. And because it's not, it's not a vacuum, it doesn't exist, it's not gone. Something fills that void, and people, that are addicted, look for something to fill that void. And the people that profit, that really make the money off of it, they understand that it's a business for them, and and they know where their market is, and they unfortunately provide those things, to the people who are in desperate need of it.
Okay.
Yeah. And unfortunately, what we're seeing also is increase in robberies at pharmacies.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah.
Burglaries, robberies, yes, sir.
Yeah. And so when if they're going to get it somewhere or the other, a bill I just passed through a subcommittee yesterday has to do with a Whistleblower Protection Act, but what we've seen is when distributors come in fact, there's a 60 Minutes expose on that several months ago, but what my bill specifically does is anyone that dispenses or handles opioids, which could be the clinic or any pharmacy, if you're an employee or you think that there's a pill mill being run or somebody's handling it inappropriately, then you'll be able to call the state, put in a complaint, and it'll go to law enforcement or to the appropriate licensing board to have it reviewed. And so that's a way of accountability that we're going to have built in.
Okay, sounds good. What do we need to do? Is there an educational process we need to do more of, or more enforcement? Of course, your legislation is going to be very significant.
Oh, absolutely. I appreciate you having me
Yeah.
here today, because getting the word out to people on the street, the issue that we have and why we're in the crisis that we're in, educating people is a huge issue that we need to deal with. Educating physicians. The governor has part of a program that he's got a committee formed that from our medical students and through physicians and nursing and basically to get them educated on the risks involved. They're also looking at in K through 12 through the health education, putting that in the standards.
I was wondering about through the schools.
Yeah, and so the earlier when people can understand these risks, by the time they're teenagers, understand that you really are playing Russian roulette.
Eric, any other comments you'd like to make about what's going on in the city? What you all are doing to be able to suppress this or eliminate this?
It's a daily. It's something that we work on daily. We have resources allocated, to combat, drug sales, inside, the city limits. That's something that, it's going on as we speak, right now during this program. And, and we'll just continue to do that. We understand too, and those officers and detectives that we have that are, assigned to do those specific tasks, they understand the significance of the opiate problem, that we have, here in our community, but, throughout the country, and we look to, try to combat that. We've had some fairly large heroin seizures, inside the city limits of Murfreesboro in the last couple of years. We got 5 kilos of heroin, just a few years ago here, which is a significant amount. I mean, it's a lot of money. So it lets you see, how it's not major metropolitan areas, that can be, that are affected. It's and high level trafficking. It can be anywhere. It
can be just like a community like ours.
Yes, sir.
Saying, right.
Right.
Gentlemen, I appreciate you both coming and talking about the opioid crisis. Eric, give me just a little brief background of your experience with the police department, your training.
I started with the police department in 1987. I worked for probably about 6 or 7 years. I was promoted to sergeant. From there, kind of got promoted to the ranks. Prior to being promoted to sergeant, I actually was a narcotics detective for a few years in the 90s. I subsequently went to the detective division as a lieutenant and ran our narcotics division for about 4 or 5 years, and then just through a process of steps, ended up in the position I'm in now.
Good. And Bryan, a brief summary of your medical background particularly.
Well, I'm an anesthesiologist.
Okay.
I work at St. Thomas Rutherford. I'm also the chairman of the health subcommittee at the Capitol.
Where's your medical degree from?
My medical degree is the University of Oklahoma, and I did my anesthesia training at University of Tennessee, Knoxville.
Okay, very good. Gentlemen, thank you very much for talking about this problem that we have in our community as well as around the country. We're indebted to Representative Bryan Terry, Dr. Bryan Terry, for being with us, and Eric Cook, Assistant Chief of the Murfreesboro Police Department. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
On the next episode of Murfreesboro Storytellers, it's election season, so we visit with the Rutherford County Election Commission to find out more about changes in how you can vote.